Okay, so today is going to be day 2 for 5-3. We're going to finish up the notes from 5A and then learn how to use our calculators to find these different values. So before we begin, let's make sure that our calculators are all in degree mode. So the way that you can double check this, usually on the graphing calculators, you're going to hit the mode button. And then I think it's on the 4th line, you'll see the word radian and degree. Make sure the word degree is highlighted. Some calculators up in the top corner might have the letters DEG. So just double check that your calculator is in degree mode. And then once you've already highlighted the word degree, you could hit the blue button or the second key and then mode, and it'll take you out of that menu. So on your calculator, what I want you to try to do, yes. On your calculator, you're going to put in sine 30, close the parentheses, hit enter, and you should get 0.5 or 1/2, depending on your calculator if it gives you in fraction form. Then try 150, 210, 330. Notice the 150 is going to give you positive half, but 210 and 330 should give you negative 0.5. So we're going to be seeing this, that we're going to, 2 of the quadrants will give us positive and 2 are going to give us negative, depending on our little acronym of all students take calculus. So now that everybody has understood what to do, when we get to the last 10 examples, we're going to be using our calculator. But for these next 4, we're going to be doing it by hand by using special right triangles. So for this example, I've written down or drawn as a reference the 2 special right triangles. So here I have my 30, 60, 90, and I have my 45, 45, which has the 2 legs that are 1 and the hypotenuse root 2. Now, what I need to do is when I'm given a problem, and if they're asking me to find theta, and it's going to be one of the special right triangles, so either it's going to be asking us to find angle measures based on a 30, 60, 90 or a 45, 45, 90. Now, as soon as you see that this answer has a root 2 in it, that tells me the triangle I'm going to use is going to be this one, because there is no root 2 in the 30, 60, 90. So what you might want to do the day of the test is quick draw on your scratch paper these 2 triangles, and you can use that as your reference. So now that I've determined that I'm using the 45, 45, 90 right triangle, what I should do is figure out what cosine stands for, and cosine of theta is really adjacent over hypotenuse. When it's the right triangle, I really don't need to go through this process. However, for the 30, 60, 90, we will. So if I have my fraction here and I put it next to it, this is telling me that my adjacent side should be root 2 and my hypotenuse should be 2. But notice in the 45, 45, I don't have those numbers. So this is actually the rationalized answer. So really what it started out as is 1 over root 2. Because remember, your hypotenuse here is the root 2. And then once it was rationalized, then it turned it back into this. So root 2 over 2. But notice both of my acute angles are the same. So I really don't need to go through and try to figure out which one's opposite and adjacent. I already know my reference angle when it's the 45, 45, 90 right triangle is 45 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little quick quadrant plane here. And in quadrant 1, my reference angle is 45. Then to get the angle measure from quadrant 2, I take that angle and I'm going to subtract it from 180. This is the process for every single problem. To figure out the angle measure for quadrant 2, subtract that first quadrant angle measure from 180, and you get 135. Then for quadrant 2, we're going to take that same 45, but instead of subtracting it from 180, I add it to 180. And for quadrant 4, I'm going to take that 45-degree angle and I'm going to subtract it from 360. You just need to memorize that this is what you're going to do each time to find that quadrant angle measure. Okay, so now I need to figure out which one of these angles, the 45, the 135, the 225, or the 315, that when I put that into my calculator and do cosine of that angle, gives me square root 2 over 2. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use our acronym, all students take calculus. Now, I also need to change this problem, and I'm going to make it a negative. I'm going to just alter it a little. I need to figure out which quadrant is going to give me a negative cosine value. So basically what I'm going to do is eliminate the ones where cosine's positive. Cosine, remember, all 6 trig functions in quadrant 1 are positive. Get rid of the 45. I need to figure out which other quadrant has cosine positive, and it's number 4. So my answer to this question, where cosine can be negative, is going to be 135 and 225. That's what theta equals. I'm going to do another one. It'll become more automatic as you see some more examples. Next one, cosine again of a negative number. So if you just realized from that last problem I just did, all students take calculus, the only ones I really need to figure out are going to be quadrant number where cosine could be negative. This one's going to be out, and this one's going to be out. So once I do the problem, these are going to be the angle measures I need. But again, I see root 3, so that tells me it's the 30, 60, 90 triangle. So again, I'm going to draw it here. And I have to figure out which angle I'm using. Am I going to use the 30 or the 60? So here's 30, 60, 90. You need to memorize that opposite of the 30 is 1. Opposite the 60 is square root 3. And opposite the 90 is the 2. Now, I'm going to take what was given to me. And I know that cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. I now need to figure out, does the 30 have the square root of 3 as its opposite? As its adjacent? So for the 30, the 1 is opposite and the root 3 is adjacent. But for the 60, this one, the opposite is root 3, and adjacent is the 1. Does that make sense? So I have to figure out which one, either the 30 or the 60, has the square root of 3 as the adjacent, because that's what should be right here. Hypotenuse is 2. So in this particular question, I can see that the adjacent is going to be the 30 that has the root 3. So now I'm going to go ahead, and that's going to be my reference angle here, and it's going to be my angle that's going to be in quadrant 1. Remember, to get the angle measure for quadrant 2, I take that 30 and I'm going to subtract it from 180. To get the angle measure in quadrant 3, I add it to 180. And to get the angle measure for quadrant 4, which I don't need because I already see that it's positive, I subtract it from 360, and that's 330. The reason why I crossed off 1 is because cosine is positive in 1, and this answer is negative. The reason why I crossed off quadrant 4 is because that C for calculus stands for cosine, and cosine has to be positive in quadrant 4. Yes?
Why didn't you add or subtract 60 plus 30?
Because in my triangle, here's 60, and if this is root 3 and 1 and 2, I need to figure out cosine, and cosine is going to use adjacent and hypotenuse. I already know my hypotenuse is 2. I was trying to get to see which angle, I'm going to erase that. I want to see which angle gives me square root 3 as adjacent. Is it the 30 that has the root 3 as adjacent, or is it the 60? And because the 30 has the square root 3 as the adjacent, that's the one I use. Does that make sense? That's how you decide which one to use. So because the root 3 was adjacent to 30, that's what I used. Now, if it was adjacent to 60, then all my angles would have been based off the 60. So essentially, when we're doing this, there's going to be 3 different scenarios. We're either going to be using the 45, using the 30, or using the 60. When it's not one of those special numbers, that's when we use our calculator. So let's try one. This time it's tangent. So again, it's got a square root 3 in it. So again, this tells me I need to use the 30, 60, 90. Again, you need to know where to put the numbers. Opposite 30 is 1. Opposite 60 is root 3 and 2. I think before I had the 60 at the bottom, but just know what's across from what. So again, here I need to identify what tangent is. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I need to figure out which angle has square root 3 as its adjacent, as its opposite, and which one has the 1 that's adjacent. So if I label this, I can see that the opposite of 60 is root 3, and its adjacent is 1. So this is why I'm going to be using the 60 and not the 30. So again, you're going to fill it in. 60 goes here, and then you're going to do 180 minus 60, 180 plus 60, and 360 minus 60. And now I have to figure out which 2 to get rid of. So again, all students take calculus. Notice my answer here is negative. Soon as you see it's negative, you know quadrant 1's out of there, because everything has to be positive in quadrant 1. And now I just have to look for the quadrant where tangent is positive, and that would be 3. So then my answer here for theta is going to be 120 degrees and 300 degrees. Good. Let's try the next one. The next one is cosecant. Okay, so for cosecant, I know that one's going to be hypotenuse over opposite. Again, I have here a root 3. So 30, 60, 90. Opposite 30 is 1. Opposite 60 is root 3. And opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse, and it's 2. So notice when I go to fill this in, my hypotenuse should be 2. But notice my fraction. It's got a 2 root 3 there. So this is telling me that this answer has been rationalized. So what I can do here is I could first do cosecant of 30, cosecant of 60 to see which one's going to give me this. So again, if I do hypotenuse over, so if I do the 30, if I do hypotenuse over opposite, 2 over 1. Right there I can see it doesn't have a radical in it, so I'm not using 30. If I go ahead and finish this, 2 over root 3, and then I rationalize it, then it goes to what I was given. Does that make sense? So you could actually set it up and find the one that matches, if that's easier for you. So I'm going to be basing my 4 quadrants on a reference angle of 60. So for quadrant 2, I do 180 minus 60. Over here, I would do 180 plus 60. And for the last one, 360 minus 60, and it's 300. Now, look at my sign. Notice it's plus minus. So whenever you have plus minus, it's all 4. So if it's only a positive answer or only a negative, you're looking for 2. But when it's got a plus minus, this is taking care of everything. So my answer here for theta is 60, 120, 240, and 300. It's all 4. You just had to figure out which one it was. Is it the 60 or is it the 30? Keep in mind, again, when you're doing these, all of the answers are going to be one of these 3. It's either going to be the 60, the 120, the 240, the 300, or it's going to be the 30, the 150, the 210, and the 330. Or if it's the 45-45, that's when we'll add the 45s. So 45, 135, 225, or 315. These are going to be the 3 scenarios when it's the special right triangles. Everybody with me on this? So if you memorize this, it'll save the calculation. This should be a 0. It'll save you the calculation of adding and subtracting. Because for this part, you won't be using your calculator. All right, next one. Tangent. So again, we know that tangent is going to be opposite over adjacent. Again, I got a root 3. So 30, 60, 90, opposite 30. So again, I need to figure out which one is it. Is it the 30 or the 60? So if you want to just do tan 30, tan 60, quick put them in and see. So opposite of 30 would be 1, and then adjacent would be root 3. And then if I did the 60, it would be root 3 over 1. Notice it's not going to be this one, but when I rationalize this one, it's my answer. So I'm going to be using 30 for this question. So again, 30 goes here, 180 minus 30, 180 plus 30, 360 minus 30. All students take calculus. I need to figure out where tangent is positive. It's positive here, and it's positive here. These are out. My answer, theta, is 30 and 210. Now we're going to get angles that are not 30, 60, or 45. So we're going to use our calculators for the next example. So again, when you're doing these, your calculator needs to be in degrees. And we're practicing putting this in our calculator. Now, notice we have degrees and minutes here. So remember from 5-1, we have to convert the minutes. So we're going to be dividing that by 60. So here's how we're going to put it in our calculator. We're going to touch the tangent button. It'll open a parentheses. And then we're going to do 29 plus, and then parenthesis 30 divided by 60, close parentheses. So again, remember it was 29 plus 30 over 60. So again, the fraction is division, and this is going to approximately give me 0.5657729. Now, on the test, just follow the directions. Now, I was speaking with Ms. Ferrier, and she was saying on the AP test for calculus, they don't make them round, they make them truncate. So I don't know if you've ever heard the word truncate, but truncate means if they say truncate this to 3 decimal places, then what you would do is just cut off everything behind after 3 decimal places. So if the instructions say to truncate, you would just write down however many places they say, and that would be your answer. Now, if it said to round to 3 decimal places, my answer is 0.566. We're going to practice truncating today. So we're going to truncate to 3 decimal places on these. So once you get it in your calculator, just write the first 3 numbers down that are after the point. Let's try the next one. Now, there is no cotangent button. We're not going to hit the second and tangent button. We're going to have to divide. We're going to have to know the reciprocal here. So when we go to key this in our calculator, and because there's so many out there and some people are using scientific, we're going to be using parentheses here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be doing parenthesis 1 divided by parentheses tangent, and then it'll open a parentheses, and then, no wait, sorry, yeah, that's right, 41 plus parenthesis 24 divided by 60, close parentheses, and maybe even another one. This should approximately give you 1.134. Now, there is a button on your calculator. It is the APPS key, which it'll convert the degrees and minutes for you. So if you're interested in learning that, there's YouTube videos, or you can come see me. The number of buttons you have to push is going to be just as many as doing it by hand. So just know that there is a feature on your calculator, but you have to hit the number, then the apps button, then put the degree, then go back, put the number, go back, hit second, apps, put the minute button, and then hit enter. So it takes just as many keystrokes. All right, next one again is cosecant, and again it's a reciprocal. So this is the reciprocal. It's 1 divided by sine, or 1 over sine. So again, I'm going to do 1 divided by, I'm going to use the sine button, and then here I'm going to do 145. Convert the minutes by dividing by 60, and then hit enter. And you should get approximately 1.776. Now, you should be making sure that these seem reasonable. Remember, cosecant, it has to be greater than 1, so this is reasonable. Tangent, it could be anything, so we really couldn't have, paid attention to that. It's all real numbers. Good so far? Let's try the next one. This time it's just cosine. No reciprocal here. So for cosine, use that button. It'll open a parentheses. 421 plus 30 divided by 60. And then hit enter. You should get 0.477. Again, remember, cosine needs to be a fraction or a number less than 1. So this is reasonable. It does make sense. Now the next one's a little tricky. You have to be careful when you key this in because this whole amount is negative. So if you put it in your calculator as negative 80 plus 66 divided by 60, this is going to give you a negative 79 number. What we need to do is make the minutes also negative when you key it in your calculator. So when you're going to put it in your calculator, you're doing negative 80 plus negative 6 divided by 60. And again, no reciprocal here. It's just the tangent. And then you would hit enter. Once you do this, you should get approximately negative 5.729. The next one is cotangent. We do need a reciprocal for this one. So for number 6, I need to know that the cotangent is really the reciprocal of tangent. So when I go to key at my calculator, I'm doing the 1 divided by tangent. And again, this is negative, and both of these are negative, so be careful. So what you're going to do here is negative 512 plus negative 20 divided by 60. And then once you hit enter, you should get approximately 1.907. And again, this is reasonable. Tangent and cotangent are all real numbers. Next one is secant. It's a reciprocal. Pretty good? Anybody still need it? Let's try the next one. So again, notice they're doing 1 over secant of 14.8. I've already got it set up here, so all I need to do is cosine. Cosine 14.8. No conversion here, it was already a decimal. And this is approximately equal to 0.966. Again, this is reasonable. Cosine has to be less than 1. So this is a valid answer. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing that we did before without the calculator, but use the calculator. So again, they're asking me to find theta values over the interval of 0 to 360. So for here, I'm given that sine of theta is equal to 1/2. Now, before I had to draw the right triangle for this and figure out which one I had to use. But for now, I'm using my calculator. This is where we're going to use the second sine key when we're looking for an angle measure. So to do this, we're going to hit our second key and then the sine button. Once we do that, it's going to change the display to say sine -1. Then in the parentheses, you're going to do 1 divided by 2. Unless you're going to key it in as a fraction, you can key it as 1 over 2. And then once we hit enter, that gives us theta. And theta here is 30. Now, when we do this, it's only going to give us our first angle measure, or the one that's in quadrant 1. So now, remember before when we did it by hand, we were looking for 2 values. So now I have to do it by hand by using the quadrants to get the other angle measure. So again, they're giving me the 30, which is in the first quadrant. So now I'm going to subtract it from 180, add it to 180, and subtract it from 360. This one we could have done by hand. The rest are going to be decimals, and we use our calculator. So now I have to figure out which one I need based on my all students take calculus. So again, it was a positive 1/2. So I have to figure out where sine is positive. It's positive in this one and in this one. These two are out. So my answer to this question, theta equals 30 and 150. Let's try the next one. Cosine. So again, I need to figure out what my first angle measure is. So I'm going to hit the second key. And then it's going to open up. Then I hit cos. And it'll open up -1. I put in that decimal, -0.4572. This is going to give me 62.79. Actually, no. It gives me 117 point, we're going to round it, 21. All right. What I need to do here is I need to find the first quadrant. So again, I really don't need the first quadrant. This is my first angle. But if I need to know what I need to add and subtract to get to the next one, you need to realize that in quadrant 1, the range of values here goes from 0 to 90. And then in quadrant 2, it's going to be 91 to 179. So because 117.21 is here, to figure out what my original reference angle was, I do 180 minus that, and I find out it's 62.79. And then from there, I can take now the 62.79, add it to 180, and then also subtract it from 360. Now, I really don't need to do the 360 because I don't need that quadrant. I'll show you that in a minute. So, but when I subtract it, it's 297.21. So all students take calculus. I need to figure out where cosine can be negative. I can see that cosine's not going to be negative here because it's positive, and it's not going to be here. So the two numbers I needed were these. So the answer to number 2 is going to be theta is 117.21 and 242.79. So for those of you who already done it, try the next one for tangent. Second tangent, put that decimal in. Everybody good? All right. So for the next one, again, you're going to do second tangent, and then that'll open tan to the -1. Put this decimal in there, hit enter, and on your calculator, you're going to get negative 50.976, so we're going to round it to negative 50.98. Again, we want the angle in the first quadrant. Notice it was between, we're just trying to find positive angles. So whenever it's a negative acute angle, know the reference angle that's going to be in quadrant 1 is just 50.98. It's the positive because it's the shortest distance to the x-axis. So for this one, 50.98, subtract that from 180 and you get 129.02. Add it to 180, so 180, and I get 230.98, and then if I subtract it from 360, I get 309.02. Again, I need to do my all students take calculus, and I need to figure out where tangent is negative. So it's positive here, and it's positive here. So my answers are theta can be 129.02 and 309.02. Those are my two answers for theta. Yes?
The tan -1, it doesn't seem to be working. I don't know how to, I don't think I have it.
This next example is very, very important. Now, what's going to happen is when you key this on your calculator, everybody try it. Tell me what you get. So again, we're going to hit second, and then we're going to hit sign, and we're going to key in 1.234. What do you guys get? Error. Now, remember that range of values that sign could have? Remember, sign has to be a fraction. Soon as you see that this answer is bigger than 1, this should tell you that this is not possible. So when you get an error, when you're taking the test, and if you get an error on your calculator, don't think you've done something wrong. It just means that this is not possible. The sine of any angle is not going to give you a number bigger than 1. Okay, so this is the empty set, or you would say not possible. On your calculator, you're going to get an error when you key this in. So this is why that slide that I had all the possible values that these trig functions can take on, this will be beneficial to you. If as soon as you see this, it should ring a bell, say, wait a minute, that's why I'm getting the error. It's bigger than 1. It has to be a fraction. Let's try another one. Cosecant. Again, this is a reciprocal of sine. So sine of theta is 1 over cosecant theta. So again, when I put this in my calculator, I'm going to divide it. So here I'm going to do, if I know that sine of theta is equal to 1 over 1.3457, when I go to key in my calculator, again, the second key, so we can get sine negative 1 up there. And then when I key that in, I'm doing 1 divided by 1.3457. Close all these parentheses, and you should get approximately, we'll say 48 degrees. Round it to a whole number. So now I need to figure out what the other angle is. So I'll do my quadrants here. 48's the first one. Subtract that from 180. Add that to 180. 228. And then subtract it from 360. $312. Now, again, do your all students take calculus? And here, I need to figure out where cosecant is going to be positive, and that's the reciprocal of sine. So here and here. Now, if you would have already trying to figure out which quadrants you were looking for an answer in, you really didn't need to do these two. You could have just subtracted it from 180 and stopped. If you knew, if you did the all students take calculus first and figure out which quadrant it should have been in. So this answer for theta is 48 degrees and 132 degrees. Couple more examples and we're done. Number 6, I think 2 more and we're done. Okay, so 6, again, cotangent, that's the reciprocal of tangent. So again, remember tangent of theta is equal to 1 over cotangent. So here, tangent theta equals 1 over negative 0.3452. So here I'm going to hit the second key. So I get tan negative 1. And when I key it in, 1 divided by negative 0.3452, close parentheses, and we should be getting, let's see, we're going to get negative 70.96. We'll round it. Again, we need the positive angle. So again, this negative 70 is here. But again, that's the reference angle. And it's the same as quadrant 1. So up here, quadrant 1, we only want positive values. That's why at the beginning I told you from 0 to 360. So 70.96. Then to get quadrant 2, subtract it from 180. That should be a 4, I think. 180 minus 70.96 and 109.04. And then if I add 70.96 to 180, I get 250.96. And then if I do 360 minus 70.96, I get 289.04. Again, I need to figure out which ones I need. All students take calculus. Again, this was a negative answer for tangent. So I can see that tangent is positive here. Get rid of it. This one's positive. So my two answers for theta are going to be 109.04 and 289.04. And these are all degrees. Next one. Everybody try the next one. Tell me what you get. Again, this is a reciprocal. Not possible. You should be getting an error because cosecant has to be greater than 1 or less than -1. So if you've memorized that range, you don't even have to do the problem. Just tell me it's empty set or not possible. Okay? However, if you're going to go through the process of doing it in your calculator, then you're going to get an error. And let's try it. So again, remember sine of theta is equal to 1 over cosecant theta. And again, fill it in. 1 over 0.3452. And then now we'll key it in. When we're looking for the angle, that's when we use the second key. So sine -1, 1 divided by 0.3452. And then you get error. So again, empty set or not possible. So again, you should become familiar with your calculator and how many parentheses you need to use depending on which calculator you're using. You can do all of this on a scientific. You really don't need a graphing calculator. And again, there is that apps key where you can key in the degrees and the minutes and convert it that way, but it's just as easy to divide by 60. I think it's faster. So your homework, if you have not done this assignment, then you need to do that in addition to the 5.3b. I do need you to turn it in to both assignments. So if you've already done this and turned it in, that's fine. If you're going to do it all on one page, just turn it in twice. Okay, because I'll choose maybe one of them to grade, and then I don't want some people turning it into one grade and one assignment and the other, so turn it into both. So that is your homework for the weekend. On Monday, again, we're going to be solving right triangles. So it's all your geometry stuff again for solving those right triangles. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, we are going to be reviewing. And make sure that you've started looking over this. Make sure that you're comfortable with your calculator. And then Thursday is the test on Chapter 5. And then Friday we start Chapter 6. And this is where we're going to be seeing the unit circle. Okay, and that is it.